Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm very excited, at very long last, to be able to announce that licensed Troubleshooter, The Guns of James Bond, written by Caleb Daniels and published by Headstamp Publishing, is at last in stock and shipping. We have received these books into our warehouse. We are in the process of shipping out our pre-orders right now. As soon as those are done, we will ship out all of the orders that are coming in day to day. And I'm really excited because this book turned out phenomenally. We were delayed in its publication for a number of reasons, but what we never did was sacrifice quality. We sacrificed time instead, and so we ended up late with a gorgeous looking book. So this is written by Caleb Daniels, who runs Commando Bond, who is a wealth of understanding of all things James Bond. Makes me look pedantically uninterested in details the way he gets into James Bond. And his book here covers not just the cinematic James Bond of the movies that we've all seen, but also the literary Bond, and not just the literary Bond of Ian Fleming, but also all of the continuation novels that were written after Fleming's death by a whole sequence of different authors. And the idea here is to cover, well, the guns of James Bond. What guns does he use? What guns do the bad guys use? How do they impact the stories? And what interesting background is there on these guns? I should add, the book does not actually cover the physical prop guns that were used in the films. Caleb Daniels wanted to cover the guns of James Bond, the character, not so much the guns of the movie productions. Most of those prop guns are rubber dummies. They're typically, at least to our thinking, not nearly as interesting as the real guns that went into the creation of the character. So you won't find the actual prop guns in this book. Now, Ian Fleming was not a gun guy at all, which leads to some interesting dilemmas, some interesting paradoxes that Caleb discusses in the book. Things where he will describe a gun in such a way that you're not really sure what it is, or that it can't be one particular thing. It has to be like half of this and half of that. So there are some interesting, a perfect example of this is Ian Fleming describes Bond's long-barreled Colt 45, and there's a whole little segment in the book talking about what gun is that actually. Of course, there are also significant elements on Bond's classic gun, the PPK. There is, in fact, an entire specific section covering the different PPKs that were used in the Bond films over the course of the many decades that those movies have been made, because the PPK changes from movie to movie and from decade to decade. Also, of course, talks about the other guns that Bond used in those films, whether they are his other Walthers, like his P99, or everything from revolvers to other semi-autos that you will see appear in the films, and also in the books. Literary Ian Fleming had a thing for giving Bond revolvers, and those are all, of course, covered in here. Those of you who are familiar with the background of the James Bond movies, and books really, will know about Q, who was actually Geoffrey Boothroyd, who was a British fan of the early novels, who wrote to Ian Fleming making suggestions on guns for Bond, and he ends up getting written into the world as Q, Major Boothroyd. And there's a lot of discussion of Boothroyd's involvement here as well, and including some of the specific literature that Boothroyd references in his letters to Ian Fleming. So there's a ton of both literary and cinematic elements here, but also the real history of what was going on with the writing of James Bond as a character, and the ties that James Bond has to the real world of espionage and secret operations. There are a few added sections in there covering this. We actually have a small section by Jack Carr, generously contributed to the book, discussing some of that. And Ian Fleming really did have ties to real-world special operations and espionage, and that's all covered in the book. Now, all of this information is tied together by just gorgeous photography from James Rupley. If you're familiar with any of Headstamp's other books or with the Vickers Guide series, you'll certainly be familiar with James Rupley's photography. He is arguably the best firearms photographer out there in the print world, and we are blessed, as always, to have his photography in this book. It makes it look just phenomenal. So if you can't tell, I am in fact really excited that we finally have these books in stock. We've been excited about this project project from, well, from when the Kickstarter ran for it about 18 months ago, and before that, while we were working with Caleb on the draft of the book, and to have them here now is fantastic. So we have these available as regular versions like this. We also have author signed copies, signed by Caleb, and we have clamshell collector editions. Those are all available through headstamppublishing.com. I have a link in the description text below if you would like to get a copy. Anyone who is a fan of James Bond, I think, would really enjoy this, because there are one or two other books out there on the guns of James Bond, and none of them even remotely hold a candle to this guy. So hopefully you will enjoy it. Hopefully you got a kick out of just flipping through here. Thank you very much for watching.